When Connecticut police responded to a routine noise complaint from a concerned neighbor, they stepped into a silent, pitch-black farmhouse. They swept their flashlights across the empty stone basement, expecting to find evidence of a break-in or a local squatter. They found no one. The entire house was completely abandoned. But sitting side by side in the dead center of the basement floor were 3 wooden chairs, each wrapped tightly with heavy, frayed ropes. The windows were locked from inside, no signs of forced entry, no blood on the floorboards, no signs of a struggle, and absolutely no bodies. Whoever had been bound to those chairs had vanished without disturbing a single lock. A minor noise violation had unveiled an impossible locked room disappearance. It was the first physical evidence of a terrifying local legend, a property locals simply called the Hollow House. A few months prior, John and Emma Miller bought the isolated farmhouse, hoping to provide a quiet life for their 8-year-old daughter, Lucy. The property was remarkably cheap, tucked away in a part of the woods where the sun rarely hit the ground. Neighbors avoided the property, claiming the house operated like a vacuum. The legend suggested that the house didn't just harbor ghosts, it slowly and quietly emptied the souls of anyone who stayed inside its walls. By reconstructing their final days, we map this disappearance onto a 3-day timeline. Hour 0 marks the exact moment the Millers moved inside. The escalation began on night 1, shifted during day 2, and reached a violent conclusion on night 3. The Millers did not simply wander off into the woods. They were caught in a supernatural mechanism that processed them over the course of exactly 72 hours. The first night began with the usual sounds of an aging structure. The wind drafted through the floorboards, and the wood creaked under the shifting temperature. John dismissed the noises, assuming the old house was just settling. But at exactly 2 a.m., the house went silent. Lucy sat straight up in bed, her eyes wide open, staring intently into a completely dark, empty corner of her bedroom. She pointed a finger into the shadows and asked her mother who the lady was. She described a woman standing perfectly still in the corner, watching her sleep. Emma saw nothing but an empty room, yet as she approached Lucy's bed, the air temperature plummeted. It was an unnatural chill that felt like stepping into a freezer. This wasn't a nightmare. It was a targeted breach. By appearing only to Lucy, the entity was establishing a psychological tether, anchoring itself to the most vulnerable member of the house and isolating her from her parents' reality. By the afternoon of day 2, Lucy had stopped speaking to her parents entirely. She spent the day whispering to the empty corners of the house, referring to her new friend as the Black Lady. While Emma watched Lucy, John followed a series of muffled, rhythmic thumps. The sounds were pulling him away from the main floor, leading him directly beneath the house to the basement. He found a half-destroyed wooden door blocking off a neglected section of the foundation. Behind it lay a room that wasn't part of the original blueprints. The walls of this hidden room were covered in thousands of chaotic etched symbols. Right in the dead center of the dirt floor sat a single wooden chair, already bound with heavy, frayed ropes. The moment John stepped inside, the air became heavy. He described a suffocating, primal sensation of being watched from the dark, as if the room itself were a predator waiting for him to settle. The basement wasn't a randomly haunted space. It was a ritualistic staging ground, prepped and waiting for a family to arrive. At 3 a.m. on night 3, the house's internal logic broke down. Every clock stopped simultaneously, only to begin ticking again in a loud, aggressive unison. Emma woke to the sound and found Lucy's bed empty. From the basement, she heard a faint voice echoing through the floorboards. "Come, play with me." She reached the hidden dirt room and found Lucy sitting motionless in the center chair. The heavy ropes wrapped tightly around her small frame, and her eyes had turned entirely black. A dense, shadowy mass pulled itself out from the solid stone of the basement wall. It took the shape of a tall, faceless figure, a woman with a hollow, black void where her features should have been. When John tried to pull Lucy from the chair, the room erupted. Lucy was violently levitated out of reach and slammed against the ceiling by an invisible force. As they stood paralyzed, the shadowy woman leaned in and whispered a final, devastating realization to the parents. "You brought her to me." The entity never had to hunt the family. It simply operated the house as a trap, relying on the parents to willingly deliver the bait into the center of the basement. Years after the Millers vanished, a paranormal investigation team entered the abandoned house. They set up motion-activated cameras in the basement, hoping to capture proof of the legend. At 3 a.m., the equipment completely malfunctioned. One of the unmanned cameras violently pivoted on its motorized mount, locking its focus onto the 3 empty chairs left behind by the police. The night vision recording revealed 3 distinct silhouettes seated in the chairs. They were positioned exactly as if they were bound by the ropes, with the black lady standing directly behind them. The footage showed the dark figure leaning over each chair, its hands slowly disappearing into the heads of the trapped silhouettes, as if it were reaching into their very consciousness. The empty chairs found by the police weren't just a crime scene. They were the physical site of a hollowing process. The Millers hadn't been moved. Their physical bodies were gone, but their presence was now permanently anchored to the basement as a supernatural prison. The investigators left the house, but the final, unedited frame of their basement recording was leaked online. It quickly became a notorious digital artifact, shared across forums and social media. Soon, people who viewed the full clip began reporting a shared symptom. They described hearing a faint, nocturnal whisper through their headphones, the same invitation heard by the Millers. "Come, sit with us." This pattern suggests the danger is no longer localized to a single basement in Connecticut. If you find an empty, isolated chair in an old home, you are seeing the end of the trap. By spreading the recording, the Hollow House has evolved into a digital contagion. It is no longer waiting for victims to move in. It is using the internet to project its presence, hunting for anyone curious enough to watch the footage and take a seat.